welcome to the Exit Only Theater podcast. Woo! I am Adrian Alderette, and I'm joined by two pretty good people.
I'll take that.
All right, please feel free to introduce yourselves. To my left,
Jonathan Fisher.
That's enough. That's to my right.
And I'm JP Lee.
Awesome. Today we're doing a very a speed dating edition of our podcast because we're trying to get out of here. All right. But no, we're going to get into it. Today we're going to be talking about the news, and we're also talking about some Tarantino action. So
yes, sir.
That's always good. All right, so our first story when it comes to news, Nintendo. There's rumors are that they're getting back into movies. Alrighty, so their CEO came out and in an interview with Fortune magazine said that they're looking broadly at what they might be doing in the entertainment business, specifically movies, and are open to looking back into that. My question to you is, it's been a long time since they've been in movies. Everybody remembers the disaster that was Mario Brothers, starring John Leguizamo and a bunch of weird asses. My question to you is, if they do return to movies, a glorious return to movies, what character, movie, property would you like, not movie, but video game, would you like to see made into a movie? What should be the first one they go after?
I preface that I am cautiously optimistic about this premise because, like you'd said, I don't think they had a great foray into it in the 90s. But I will say that I grew up loving Zelda, so I would love, just in the Game of Thrones-esque atmosphere that we live in nowadays, to just do a pretty epic live-action version of Zelda would be pretty cool. So.
That is awesome. Jonathan, what do you think?
I think we need a reboot of the Mario Brothers.
We need to reset
it would be
the
such
clock.
a good adventure movie.
And then children just ignore the one that happened in the 90s.
I will say this.
We owe it to them.
It's been, more than, maybe 15, 16 years since the last one? Since the
first
one, it is still too soon for a Mario reboot. It is still too soon. This is the thing. I agree with you. It would be cool to see that again, but I would like to see it done with CGI.
I was gonna say, what if it was computer animated?
If it was computer animated, I'd be like, all right, cool. So if it looked like Wreck-It Ralph, I'm down. But if I were to see a property, I would kind of do something like the way DC plans on doing their Justice League. Throw in all your characters into one movie. It will be an adaptation of Super Smash Brothers.
That could be really good.
Where it would be like the Suicide Squad of kindness.
You have a plot line.
It's just it's because it would be so cool. It's like they're all fighting against each other, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, dude, there's a guy playing, and we can't even control ourselves. They come out of the screen. They come into the real world because it's been too long that we've been in here. It's time to come out and branch out. Bam, subtext.
Star Fox would be cool too.
Oh, damn, that's a good one. Damn it. Star Fox is good. That was my favorite N64.
Do you think Universal is pushing Mario to make movies because of the whole Nintendo land they're potentially doing at Islands of Adventure?
Is that a real thing?
I forgot about that.
You know
turning the Marvel side into a Nintendo land.
I completely forgot about that.
You know what?
That's got to be related.
That has to be related because you want to talk about for Universal perfect timing for everything. Nintendo is not the top gaming system anymore.
No.
So I think right now, even though I remember we talked about it. You mentioned the stat. Even though they're not making as much money now, they could totally not do anything and still be
on 5 or 6 consoles and still be okay.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
They're financially fine. They've made so much money, but with them being on the down low, and any good companies look, we want to be relevant again. It's you know what? Put out movies, man. You know, look what Marvel did. Let's be real. Even though comic book movies have always been a thing for the last 20 years,
right?
Not a lot of people read them. That's a very small population that actually reads comic books. You make these movies, people are actually oh, I want to read Winter Soldier, even though it has nothing to do with the movie.
Right, but
you
it's
want to
available
read
to a wider audience.
Exactly.
I feel like the generation of 1 to 10-year-olds right now has nothing to do with Nintendo. There's none of the Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon. I feel like that's not a thing anymore.
It can't be as big as it was when we were kids.
I think the only people that are into it are literally people our age.
Yeah.
They're
just still collecting it for money's sake.
Yeah. All right, so the next news story.
Yes.
Vin Diesel came out and said that Triple X, the sequel to his movie, not Triple X State of the Union starring Ice Cube, which was also a classic.
Ew, okay.
But the sequel to that is going to start shooting in this December. My question I pose to the forum here, is it good or bad for Vin Diesel that he's returning to a familiar territory? Because, and I reference that by saying, look, he disappeared from Riddick and he disappeared from Fast and Furious. Then he comes back, and now all those franchises are kind of back. Do you think this is a wise move for him to continue this? Or do you think he's kind of he's overplaying his hand now?
It could be a false equivalency to say that he's brought all these franchises back. Because, he came back in addition to all these other people coming back for Fast and Furious franchise. Like,
Sure.
it wasn't just him, but
You could credit
he was,
The Rock, yeah.
Yeah, I would say The Rock's been like the most fun in the last few films altogether. But I wasn't a huge fan of the Triple X franchise in general. I mean, I know based on your nickname at work, maybe you were more of a fan of it, but...
Here's a mini story. My nickname at work is Triple X.
Yes. So
End of mini story.
So,
Continue.
there may be some bias there, but I think that for him, Strike the Iron while it's hot, I'm not sure I'll see it, but I think there are many people, 18 to 25-year-old guys specifically, who will go flocking to that movie. So.
Yeah. Jonathan, what do you think?
I hate Vin Diesel. I think he's a meathead. I don't like any of his movies.
Well, the Iron
I like
Giant...
Fast and the Furious. I like Guardians of the Galaxy, but I don't
Iron
like...
Giant. His voice work is
Iron
incredible.
Giant's great. But
Such
I'm
a
not going to go
hater.
see the new movie.
Fair enough.
Look, you hit it right.
going
You
for it,
hit the nail. No, you hit the nail right on the head. You know, if he's not saying I am Groot, I just want to see him blowing up stuff.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, if he's
He
doing
knows
one of
his
those two
range.
things, that's fine. That's the thing. Like, sometimes, like, we always, like, the argument that I usually give with some people, they're like, oh, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger is not a great of a legend as Robert De Niro. I'm like, I disagree.
Mm-hmm.
They're equally the same kind of, like, a legend status, but for their own points.
Completely different reasons, yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's never going to go out and make a movie about Mother Teresa. He's not going to do it.
Okay.
Unless there's explosions in it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, it makes sense for who he is as an actor and for him as the style of movie he's doing. Vin Diesel, like...
That's like saying Ronald Reagan and Trump are the same person.
No.
That's no. I'm saying...
No.
I'm not saying...
They both appeal to different audiences to the same
And they're
extent.
wildly popular.
And they're
their
wildly
specific...
popular.
I'm just saying, like, if
But
you
that's
know
not
your
necessarily
strengths...
untrue.
If you know your strengths, play with it. Audiences respond to that. You know what? If you want... If you tried the dramatic stuff, didn't work out. If you want
I heard he was good in Boiler Room and the stuff he's
He
been
was good in Boiler Room.
Yeah.
I did see Boiler Room. That was good.
I think if you have gotten to a point maybe 20 years into your career like he has, and you've tried things, and you're like, all right, you know, I've done this, I've done that, and you're returning to what you knew worked best, I can't fault you for that. Like, if you're right off the bat just doing the same thing over and over again, I'm like, all right, you gotta do something new. But he's already done that, so why not? Just go make money. That's
there are
fine.
very few Liam niece as out there where you can kind of venture in to do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, it's like, if people are responding to it and you enjoy making them, go right ahead. I'll watch. I didn't like first Triple X, but you know what? Whatever. I'm down. All right, our next story. Kind of, obviously, our tone's going to change on this one.
Just a little bit.
Colin Trevorrow recently came out and had, he recently kind of put his foot in his mouth and then took it out and then put it back again. He recently put out a quote, kind of discussing why there are a lack of female blockbuster directors in Hollywood. And here I have the quote. I want to believe that a filmmaker with both the desire and ability to make a studio blockbuster will be given an opportunity to make their case. I stress desire because I honestly think that is a part of the issue. Many of the top female directors in our industry are not interested in doing a piece of studio business for its own sake. These filmmakers have clear voices and stories to tell that don't necessarily involve superheroes or spaceships or dinosaurs. To me, it's not. This is not a simple case of exclusion with an impenetrable corporate system. It's complex and it involves a component that I think is rarely discussed: very high levels of artistic and creative integrity among female directors. Now, obviously, he made an ass of himself with that quote.
A little bit.
He dressed it up, and like some people were like, "Oh, he was just saying something." I'm like, no, he made an ass of himself. What do you, JP Lee? I want you to go first. As the female here, what are your thoughts?
The way that, okay, so when I heard it, when you said it out loud once again, when he says, I want to believe that a filmmaker with both a desire and ability to make a studio blockbuster will be given the opportunity to make their case, that implies that there aren't any.
Yeah.
And that bothers me because I wholeheartedly don't believe that. I don't believe that there aren't any that just haven't walked through the door yet.
Yeah.
And also to assume that it's as simple as just showing up and saying, I can do this, and it's like buying cereal at a grocery store. It's not that easy. You have to be given the opportunity, and there's a system that makes that quite difficult for some people because it is a little bit of a boys' club. I mean, it's not, that's not disingenuous. It is a boys' club.
Yeah.
And for me, and on a personal note, not just being a lady in the room, my favorite movie of all time is Jurassic Park. I would have killed to have made Jurassic World, and I could argue that I would have done a better job, Mr. Trevorrow. So I struggle with that just because of my like affiliation for like Spielberg blockbuster movies and just how I grew up wanting to be quote unquote Stephanie Spielberg. So I think he was incorrect. I think what he walked back a little bit. I see where he was trying to go. It's a complicated issue that I don't think he tackled the right way.
Yeah, Jonathan, what do you think?
It's not a helpful quote by any means.
No,
but
no,
it's a
it's
boys and girls. I mean, it's a boys club, like you said. Mm-hmm. But you you have to look at two different like female directors. There's Catherine Bigelow,
Yeah.
who basically got into the business because of her husband, right?
I mean, she's no. That's the problem, is that she's known for being James Cameron's ex.
Yeah.
That may or may
And
may
that
not
probably
be
helped
genuinely.
her in some
Yeah,
way.
exactly. But,
then
it doesn't
you have,
have
like,
to be her marker.
Ava DuVernay, or how do you pronounce her
Ava
name?
DuVernay.
Ava
I
Yeah.
think she's like the perfect like pinnacle.
The
like,
perfect example.
She worked her ass off, and I don't think she was really given anything because
Yeah.
she was a female.
She earned everything she got,
And
and
she
she
earned- and it
turned
goes-
some down too.
And it goes directly against his quote.
Yeah,
like
but-
she had a passion and a dream to like make.
True, but she turned down a
Yeah,
superhero film, so
she
it's like
turned out. Yeah, that's the thing. Like and that one, I'm gonna put an asterisk next to
Yep.
that one, just because it's kind of like it was Marvel approached Ava DuVernay
Yeah.
to direct Black Panther, and there were long talks and whatever. She chose to say no because she's like, look, this is, creatively, I want to, the way I would do it would be differently. So
Yeah.
we're mutually going to kind of
to
like
have the
part
strength
ways.
of voice and to
Doesn't
say
that even
no
go
is
even more
interesting.
powerful for female
I
directors? That she
agree.
wants to say, has the power to say
That's
no?
why I said is that she
No,
walks into
yeah,
that room
yeah,
and
she said
says,
no.
I don't want to do it.
But the
and
reason I
she's
put an asterisk to that is because it's like the one black character you're making, you're just like, all right, let's just get a black
The hot
director
hand.
just to kind of like the
Yeah,
hot hand,
exactly.
for PR
it's
sake, it
it's
looks
a little
good.
patronizing, and
Yeah.
just in overall, a lot of the conversation just seems to be like they're out there somewhere. We just have to find them. It's
Yeah,
like that's,
and the thing is-
it has to be a collaborative
Yeah.
effort. It can't just be like we have to pluck them out of the
And
obscurity.
I obviously I live in this I like looking up like news stories, rumors, and stuff like that, and specifically with superhero movies. And this obviously plays into the blockbuster discussion we're
Yeah.
having now. There are a lot of female directors that actually really want to direct this stuff, and like Colin Trevorrow, like look, he's being naive. Because
he had his heart in the right place. It didn't come across the right
like
way.
Marvel, you could look at all the directors Marvel has picked to direct their features. Great directors. But at the same time, like there's no diversity in there. You look at those guys, all white,
white men.
all these white dudes, and to me, and this is the thing, like that you can't tell me that there aren't great female action directors out there.
Or just minorities in
Lexi
general.
recently, director Lexi Alexander. I'm gonna read off some credits: Punisher, Warzone, Green Street Hooligans. Green Street Hooligans 2, and this other action underrated movie called Johnny Flinton. She went on record saying there's a property called Captain Marvel for Marvel, and they're developing it right now to be a movie, and they're looking for female directors to direct the female-led action movie.
Of course.
So it's like, hey, we made a movie for you to make your movie.
It just kind of lends itself to being a little uncomfortable.
Yeah,
It's
and she went on record like, look, I don't care about the bias and stuff. I'll do it for free. She has yet to be contacted for it.
Wow.
And
that's frustrating
Yeah.
from my perspective, because it's something that that's an industry I still want to jump into, and it's like is that really how the atmosphere is,
And there's also another director, Michelle MacLaren,
Yeah.
who's directed some of the best episodes of Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, and like she was approached to direct Wonder Woman and was almost officially signed, but she walked away because for creative reasons. My thing is like, yeah, I understand like for a studio, yeah, it makes sense for you. Oh, we're making a female-led superhero movie. Let's pick a female. Why do you like? Why can't she
I
get
direct Iron Man 4? Like,
Yeah.
why
Well, that's the thing,
can't I
like,
do that? You know?
Yeah, like that's where my frustration ends, and I
Yeah.
can't imagine what it's like for an actual female, a storyteller that actually wants to do just any story, not just one is like, oh, Wonder Woman, I could do it now. Here we go.
And I agree, and I think for me it affected. I don't know. The quote affected me a little bit more just because, and we talked about this pre-recording.
Yeah.
Was just some of the characters that not that he wrote necessarily Trevorrow, but the characters he's helped portray, and specifically in Jurassic World, the female character he had, his main character, not any fault of Bryce Dallas Howard's part, was not a very well thought out, complex 21st century female character. On the surface, it seemed that way, but it really wasn't. So it's just, to me, it's like icing on the cake for him to say this on top of that. You're like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's not helping your case, man.
No.
Like, it doesn't help. But
Like,
anyway.
a really good director. He's eventually going to direct Star Wars Episode 9.
Yeah, I'm
but,
not going to boycott or
know.
anything. I just think he came from the right place and didn't maybe think through what he was saying.
No, I did not think. All right, so the next bit of news is there was a rumor. There's a podcast that there's a guy that I listen to. His name's John Shemp, director, small-time director, but he directs a lot of animated stuff. But he's in the know when it comes to superhero films. And he came out and said that according to his sources, the Man of Steel sequel will be directed by Mad Max Fury Road director George Miller. And like, look, before we get excited, the first question I pose to you guys is like if this ends up being true, and according to what I've read, it sounds like it may eventually be released that it's true. Are you excited to see Superman, particularly in George Miller's hands?
How about Jonathan? You want to go first?
I mean, I'm excited. I have to say I haven't seen that many George Miller movies.
You've seen Happy Feet.
I've seen that, which was an amazing soundtrack.
Shows his range,
all
eh?
around.
Yeah, seriously.
But Mad Max was amazing, and I think he could definitely do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know my stance on Snyder, so
Oh yeah.
for me, I mean, I don't necessarily want him to do the sequel. So if it's anyone and it can be George Miller, that's just like on top of the fact is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued, but I'm also worried because George Miller's best stuff is built in the Mad Max world, and to do something that is completely random like Happy Feet is one thing, but to do something that's an action-packed, action-driven film that's sort of in the same vein feels like it could be dangerous for him. It could be bleeding into his own genre a little too much.
I will say this: like years ago, this is a fact. Around in the mid-2000s, he was actually developing and was like weeks away from beginning production on a Justice League movie.
Okay.
And he even casted Armie Hammer as Batman.
Way back in the day.
Yeah, so like Warner Brothers has a history with him, and they obviously trust him enough to where at one point they were like, "Hey, we're gonna make this Justice League movie," but then Batman Begins came out. He's like, "Whoa,
Hold on.
let's ride this out for a while."
Yeah.
That being said, I couldn't imagine not even a more random, but a more perfect director for any DC property right now. And even though like he wouldn't have been my choice for Superman, I would have loved to have seen him do something like really obscure, like maybe Cyborg. Obviously, things that I only know.
Things that he could take a little more creative freedom with.
Yeah, like Superman. There's that big like burden on your shoulders. Like, all right, can you make a good one? Because technically, we have yet to see a great Superman movie since the early '80s with Richard Donner's first Superman. But I couldn't be any more excited, and I think it's legit because he was spotted on set for Suicide Squad, just randomly there, randomly
What
there.
are the odds?
It's just like, you don't just end up in Toronto. It's like, hey guys, I'm just randomly here. I think it's interesting that I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I hope this is true. I can't wait for it, and I think he could kind of salvage what Zack Snyder almost tried to do with the first Man of Steel movie. Hopefully.
Is it going to be rushed though? Because didn't he spend like years like storyboarding Mad Max?
He had that in his head.
Well, yeah, no. Well, the
years,
thing is, like, he held that in his pocket just because he wanted to do other stuff, and then like Mel Gibson at the time was his only Mad Max. Obviously, shit hit the biggest of fans with Mel Gibson, so that had a part to do with it. But yeah, I'm excited to see him back in the game. The 70-year-old director now is being sought to direct fresh new action.
Hey, you're hitting a renaissance.
I love it,
Better
man.
late than never.
All right, our last bit of news deals with Christian Bale. He's been reportedly in talks to star in a Enzo Ferrari biopic movie. My question to you guys: we haven't seen Christian Bale in a while. Where the hell has he been? Is this? Are you excited to see him in a biopic?
Is he going to show up like 400 pounds?
Whatever the case may be.
I think he's actually gonna do like this whole transformation where he's actually the car.
Yeah, it's like Cars 3.
He's been eating metal.
He's just like, he's just.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you saw it like that, I'm definitely going to see it. But...
What's his last like 6 movies been?
Well, okay. Well, I was looking at Michael Mann, but I mean, he's been in a bunch of David O. Russell stuff recently. So that's essentially
that's been his
that
major
Batman
stuff.
has been his bread and butter for the last few years.
Like he's been great in everything.
Of course, it's Christian Bale.
He's been a little quiet recently. Probably rightfully so. After Batman, you kind of take that break where you're just like, look, I made all the money in the world. I can do what I want. That sounds nothing like Christian Bale.
No, not quite.
But that being said, like, I could see why he would take a small break and only kind of be very picky and choosy.
I forgot one of his more recent roles was Exodus: Gods and Kings, which did not pan out too well.
Woo! Oh God, you just reminded me.
No, but some of his bigger films the last couple years: American Hustle, Dark Knight Rises, The Fighter, Public Enemies, Terminator Salvation, Dark Knight. Like, so it's just he kind of sprinkles in other films with his
He
Batman.
looked like he was trying to get paid for a while.
Yeah, and he's still doing well in every one of them, but some are better than others.
Now, he's a great actor, but would you, this could be, like, kind of going back to the Vin Diesel thing. I'm not comparing him to Vin Diesel, but he was so great as Batman, even though, like, Terminator Salvation wasn't good, he was an interesting character. I love him in Reign of Fire from the early 2000s. Would you like to see him kind of come back a little bit in the action role? Because physically he could take it. Do you think he would, do you think he'll ever come back to that?
It's weird because I think the conversation, I like Bale, and I trust him for a lot of the things he does. I don't really trust Michael Mann. Is that weird? Like, I'm not a huge fan. I didn't see Public Enemies.
He's not.
Miami Vice wasn't great. Collateral was good, but it was just because the casting was intriguing.
Yeah.
Like, Ali didn't hit on all cylinders. The Insider was good because you had Russell Crowe killing it in every scene. Like, I feel like every movie he has, it's like, that's good, but, and I'm
He has a very, and I think it deals with his style too. Like, aside from Collateral, his his movies, like you're saying, they're kind of they flatline, not in a bad way, but they're always always in the
water.
middle.
Yeah,
they're still water,
calm,
and I think that kind of goes against his because of his style. He's very minimalistic when it comes to how he shoots.
Yeah,
it looks like he uses a shit ton of natural light. He doesn't like doing anything crazy. Like in Public Enemies, I liked because of the way he chose to shoot it, where it's like this is like he chose to make a period film, but not in an epic way. Yeah. Where it was just like, look, we're gonna follow it around like it was a documentary. Yeah, it was flat, but at the same time, it was very interesting.
And it was intentional, so I can respect
it was very
that.
intentional. But yeah, I could totally agree where it's like, you're gonna make a movie about the guy who probably revolutionized automobiles, and you're gonna choose this guy to direct it.
I'm just a little more
like...
it
was supposed to be Sidney Pollock's baby for a while.
Really?
And then he passed away.
Which would have been really interesting, because he can do the subtleties of actually making it like a character-driven piece more so than I think men can do. But I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna see it. But he's in that Ron Howard territory for me right now, where his movies are good and they're supposed to be good. Like, I get it, but I don't always want to see them.
This is an interesting point. Like, this will be the last point, then we move on to our next topic. But like, is Christian Bale if let's say you cast him in any movie, let's say you didn't know about this, and he's like, oh, he's Enzo Ferrari. Do you automatically say I need to see that, like a Leonardo DiCaprio movie, perhaps?
I think Bale is in that conversation.
Is it because he takes himself so seriously?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think if he demands that respect and he keeps doing films that showcase that, you can't really ignore it. But at the same time, he's bound to have a few misses. I'm not sure if this is going to be as popular as it looks like it could be. So
I like Christian Bale. I look forward to it. Hopefully, he kind of comes back. He's disappeared.
Rightly so. He needed to take a break so he wasn't getting overshot.
I'm back. I'm Enzo Ferrari.
Exactly.
Where's the line? This isn't a car.
Michael Mann's like, I made a mistake.
We need you to be less Batman.
Less bat, whatever you're doing.
I am Ferrari.
He's like, I'm sorry, my voice
Get in the car. Good God. That'd be great. Alright, so that was our news section. Alright, we're moving on to our Tarantino... Couldn't think of a name of it. Tarantino section.
Interview breakdown. Dun, dun, dun. He sometimes does that when
that was awesome. That was awesome. Alright, but we're breaking down recently Quentin Tarantino, everybody's favorite director. Because he talks. Dude, let's be real. Like when you're like, who would I want to hang out with?
Yeah,
would I want to hang out with, somebody that's like really serious, or Tarantino, where you could talk movies with? Like he would be perfect to have a guest on our show.
He's the opposite.
We could all dream. Yeah. But yeah, like recently he came out in an interview for New York Magazine, and he pretty much literally answered not answered the most interesting questions, but he gave the most interesting answers for like everything. Like the only thing he didn't answer was like, what would be great for lunch? Oh man, you can pick anything, man. You can pick pizza, dude. Like,
honestly, it was hard to narrow down what the topics were going to be that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, but the first thing, we're going to read off some quotes, and we're kind of going to get into it. So the first quote that we found really interesting, he kind of talked about how today's movies are just, or at least the movies that are quote unquote great, are just used for Oscar bait, not necessarily trying to be great. So I'm going to read the quote. The movies that used to be treated as independent movies, like the Sundance movies of the 90s, those are the movies that are up for Oscars now. Stuff like The Kids Are Alright and The Fighter, they're the mid-budget movies now. They just have bigger stars and bigger budgets. They're good, but I don't know if they have the staying power that some of the movies of the 90s and the 70s did. I don't know if we're going to be talking about The Town or The Kids Are Alright or An Education 20, 30 years from now. Notes on a Scandal is another one. Philomena. I always mess that up. Half of these Cate Blanchett movies, they're all just like these artsy things. I'm not saying that they're bad movies, but I don't think most of them have a shelf life. But The Fighter or American Hustle, those will be watched 30 years from now. Okay, that was an interesting quote. My question to you is, do you think that the intention of making a great movie now is different from the way great movies were made back then?
As opposed to like in the 90s and the 70s, like you
said?
Yeah, to a certain extent, and we talked about this before, I think it's because the idea of the mid-tier movie just doesn't exist anymore. There aren't those 30, 40, 50 million dollar budget movies that make 100 million. That in most worlds, if you double whatever you set out to make, that's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. That doesn't exist nowadays. Now it is like passion projects that actors get paid for nothing for that show on Sundance and make it into maybe 300 theaters.
Yeah.
Or it's a giant blockbuster, and it's that schism between the two is what's fueling this argument. So I think he's 100% correct.
Yeah.
I genuinely feel as though, and the problem is that his argument is that these movies are Oscar bait. They're not good, and I don't think that's mutually exclusive. I don't think that Oscar bait movies are all inherently bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, it's disingenuous to say that, because I feel like there are Oscar movies that, like Birdman was an Oscar bait movie for Michael Keaton. Like, he was cast specifically because he played Batman. Like, that was like his vehicle. That movie was incredible. So it's like, it's hard for me to say that he's 100% correct, because I think his premise is a little off. But where he's coming from makes sense, so.
For me, I feel like the mid-tier movies are like, we're in like a very like changing progressive time, and I feel like a lot of these mid-tier movies are almost trying to do like a moral story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like The Kids Are Alright was kind of about gay marriage, and
Yeah.
Blue Jasmine, wasn't that about like going through divorce and
They're
like,
very human condition.
human condition? And I feel
movies.
like back in the 90s we had less of that, and also with like the 90s movies, I feel like we hold them to such a high esteem because they were our childhood. We don't see the faults that are
That's good.
present
The
in them.
nostalgia angle. I mean, people rip apart Forrest Gump, and I like refuse to do it because I watched it so much as a
Yeah.
kid. So yeah, I could see that.
But going with like a good movie and an Oscar movie, like Argo would be that, but now we talk crap about Argo because it's not so Oscar worthy as we think it was.
It's true. When he started talking about it, I immediately thought of Argo. Like, that movie's
Yeah.
shelf life isn't, to me, it's not
It
that
was a
great.
fun movie, but we don't like it because it didn't bring enough to the table. So it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Exactly.
Yeah, my argument is, and like, it's really hard because like, you could like, it's easy for us to point and say, man, dude, the quality of films that studios are pointing out are garbage. It's like, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to blame the filmmaker because like their script is their script. They'll be like, all right, I have this really great story, awesome, gets nominated, doesn't have a shelf life. You can't really predict that.
Yeah.
That being said, there's a very noticeable, I guess, drop off when it comes to I'm not gonna say the quality of movies, but the greatness of the movie.
Yeah, or the quantity of those movies.
Because like if you look at the last few Oscar winners from the last few years, Birdman from this past year, 12 Years a Slave the year before, Argo, The Artist, The King's Speech, The Hurt Locker, Slumdog Millionaire.
Which, you said 4 movies in a row with Slumdog, King's Speech, what was the other? Argo and something else. What was it?
The Artist.
I think, no, 12 Years a Slave I think has lasting power just for how impactful that movie is. But those 4 movies, they don't linger in your consciousness. And some of them are entertaining, and some of them are really like important. But to me, an Oscar movie has to be both, and that's not that exists. He's implying that doesn't exist, but that's to that point. That's an interesting thing. Those movies are exactly that.
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of these are movies that like nowadays, like for instance, if you saw them all, you're going through your guide on demand or something. And you're like, oh, The Artist is on, nah.
No.
King's Speech, nah. The Hurt Locker, not really. Slumdog Millionaire, hell no.
I've watched Slumdog Millionaire. I like that. I'll defend
He
it.
also apologizes for Crash, so
Oh my God.
it's
But,
a
like,
whole another conversation.
I guess like it's very interesting because like you look and you see the movies that you like if we were to go back to the 90s, let's say like we're pointing out the movies that we liked then that were quote unquote classics.
Yeah.
I would say aside from Pulp Fiction, like you look at the great movies, like we always point to 99.
Yeah.
Like you got Fight Club, The Matrix. You can make American Beauty. Those are movies that are totally still relevant now, and it's kind of like. And this is obviously something that we can't answer like in one discussion, but like it's like what was the filmmaker seeing there, or the scriptwriter that was just like, man, this is a topic that I know will last, or because like you watch The Matrix and you see how that was put together and it was written. That was made to have staying power.
Yeah.
And Fight Club is the opposite. I don't think it was made to necessarily have staying power, but it made so many bold statements to the state of the world that you're just like, oh man, dude.
It's just the risks that studios are willing to take on writing.
I think I'm glad you brought that up. I think a lot of it deals with risk. I think I feel like I'm not gonna say that maybe filmmakers now aren't as risky as they were then, but they're not necessarily as ambitious to take a story and see like, all right, how can we morph it into something greater?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I don't know. It's an interesting point. I'm glad Tarantino brought it up. But the next point that we're to go after is it's probably the funnest one. Tarantino came out and he said that he loved How I Met Your Mother, but he hated True Detective. I think it's interesting. The quote of True Detective is pretty funny. He's like, I tried to watch the first episode of season 1, the quote unquote really great one, and I didn't get into it at all. I thought it was really boring, and season 2 looks awful. Just the trailer. All these handsome actors trying not to be handsome and walking around looking like the weight of the world is on their shoulders. It's so serious, and they're so tortured, trying to look miserable with their mustaches and grungy clothes. Okay, what do you think about that?
He's 100% correct. I mean, I didn't watch True Detective, But I have heard friends who watched seasons 1 and 2, and they agree wholeheartedly with what he said in season 2.
Yeah.
I can't speak to season 1, but that was at the heyday of the McConaughey era.
The reconnaissance.
So, yeah, so I can't. I mean, there's something to say about that. But
All right.
but I mean, I love the fact that he said he loved How I Met Your Mother, because the fact that Quentin Tarantino, who is an auteur, one of the top 10 directors of the last 30 years, loves a sitcom that had like a recorded laugh track. Like that's to me is hysterical. That like there speaks to just like. There's solid writing to him he's okay with, regardless of where the medium is.
Yeah.
Like, he'll watch a good Vine, I think. Like, if something funny on Vine happened, I feel like if it's written, he'll like it.
I mean, Jen and I have watched How I Met Your Mother since, like, season 1, so I'm just gonna...
I think we all agree. We love that
It
show.
makes
It's
us,
like
it makes us partial to it.
I mean, and writing for Neil Patrick Harris, like, I think it comes naturally, but, like, you're still right. Like, the jokes hit almost, like, 95% of the time.
Things don't get stale, so I feel like he appreciates that, which is funny, because some people, like, they see that sitcom and like, oh, it's the same joke. Like Big Bang Theory to me, like, because I didn't watch it from the beginning, it's like, this to me just looks like the same episode every week. So for him to recognize that stuff is really cool, and for him to have such a strong statement about True Detective is hysterical.
He also said he watches the Newsroom, like, religious. He watches
Yeah,
religiously.
he loves it. But like, and he even said it too. Like, it's like, well, it's like he made. I don't have it here. I thought I had it, but he's like he mentioned that he's like, yeah, I love the Newsroom, but you know, you're like, it's not a surprise that a guy who loves dialogue would watch something like
exactly.
Aaron Sorkin. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Exactly.
No, I think it's interesting, but I like my favorite thing that I took away from that was like this guy's such a movie geek because he watches any media. He loves storytelling. He loves being entertained, and like I'm glad that he's real about it. Because even though look, I really enjoyed season 1 of True Detective. I don't think it's as great as people make it out to be, but I'm glad he kind of hit it on the head. It was kind of boring. It was kind of flat. Yeah. And Tarantino doesn't necessarily like dark. He's been on record saying that he hates Batman. Like he thinks he's the least interesting character in the world. Yeah. But I love that, and you can kind of see like what he likes is kind of fits what his style is. How I Met Your Mother is an ensemble show.
Yeah,
it's an ensemble. The Newsroom, ensemble show. True Detective, 3-character race.
True. He likes Reservoir Dogs set to laugh tracks.
Yeah,
That's what he prefers.
It's awesome. I love that he's out there. He's watching stuff.
In today's TV landscape, there's a lot of good stuff out there, so I'm glad he's not ignoring it.
Oh God, I'm
glad he's going against the grain on some stuff. If he said that like 4 or 5 months ago when True Detective was at like the height,
yeah, he probably would have gotten a lot of flack for it.
He would be like, "What?
How dare you?
You can't say that, man. No, not all right. No. All right, the next part of the Tarantino mega interview kind of takes a slight jab at Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, saying that they have no reason to be pessimistic about film's future. I quote, "My pessimism isn't about franchise filmmaking. That's been going on since I was born. You could talk about Transformers now, but you could talk about the Planet of the Apes movies and James Bond when I was a little kid. I can't wait to see those. And I couldn't wait to see those. Actually, when we're done here, I'm going to go see Guy Ritchie's Man from U.N.C.L.E. I don't know why Spielberg and Lucas would be complaining about movies like that. They don't have to direct them."
And they haven't been.
All right, my question to you, I disagree. Do you agree with what he says here?
I agree that they don't need to be complaining about the film industry because it's a monster they created.
Yeah.
You know, like this
specifically those two.
Right. Like it's weird for you to just like I feel like you birthed this child and then now it's 25 running around doing exactly what you did when you were 25. Like how could you get mad at it for just following your example? Like you followed your lead. Like stop complaining. Either fix it and direct some movies that may or may not fit in that mold.
Don't make Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal fuck up. Like seriously.
with CGI ants and swinging monkeys and refrigerators. Like that's to me is just absurd.
Don't forget a weird gray alien.
I've seen that movie once.
And an old man swinging on trees where we never see his face.
And they're keeping up with cars that are going 50 miles an hour. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway.
No.
But that's the thing is like the scope of blockbusters when they were making them, it was fun that they were practical. Nowadays they're dated now. You can't look forward to them after 10 years because they look bad. So
I just feel like Spielberg and Lucas is nervous about like having to actually like put in some man hours and like come up with like
this is getting out of hand.
Yeah, He's like, I gave this Colin Trevorrow guy the keys and he didn't crash it. Like, damn it, what have I done?
Go ahead.
Like seriously, like I kind of to piggyback off that. I think where Tarantino is right. I think like the big conception, not just the perception of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, but a lot of people nowadays, like the hipster thing to say is like, oh man, there are too many superhero movies, dude. All the studios are doing them. It's only 3 studios.
Yeah.
This is the thing.
They're
Nowadays,
pumping them out like rapid.
they're
That's
pumping
the
them out.
thing.
That's the thing. Like,
They're doing a lot.
my argument is that there's more variety because there's a lot more studios now than there ever were. Like, there's Sony, even though it's struggling, there's Sony, you have 20th Century Fox, you have Disney, now you have Marvel Studios, who's specifically just making franchise movies.
Yeah.
And studios like that can exist, and I don't have a problem with that. One, obviously, because I enjoy the movies.
Right.
But two, like, for instance, Blumhouse Productions. They usually only put out horror movies. All of them, in my opinion, are majority terrible, but they're quote-unquote successful because they make their money back easily because they're only worth
$15 million to make.
like Sinister 2, terrible reviews. It cost only $8 million to make. How much did it make opening weekend? $10 million.
They're good.
Quote unquote successful.
It'll ride out, make 4 times what it costs.
Yeah, so I personally, like, I agree with Tarantino. Look, you don't have to direct them, but if you do, make a good movie.
Right, and my argument is that nowadays it's like the material, there's nothing original. There are no franchises out there other than like Fast and Furious that didn't come from something else. So it's like...
Fast and Furious was kind of like a rip-off of Point Break, just saying.
Okay, fair enough. But like, it's not something that you're going to be like, based on Point Break. Like, it wasn't that. So like, for me, like, Indiana Jones is an original concept. Star Wars, like, these are things that were like, yes, they created a monster with those creations, but at least there was a nugget of originality in them. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. Like, comic books are great, but those are storyboards. You don't have to do any work with that. Like, I want you to put some work into it.
That's a great point. I completely agree with you. Like, you can even make the case, like, even though Mad Max Fury Road was terrific, not original. But obviously it came from the same film director, but sometimes, like, I agree with you where it's like, where's the next great idea coming from?
A nugget of... Like, that's why, like, for all the faults of Interstellar... I mean, I don't love that movie, but at least it's original. Like, I will keep saying that, even if as more time passes, I don't like that movie even more and more, but...
Brownie points again. All right.
Going back to who the heart of this article is about, you could say Quentin Tarantino's, like, every movie is basically original.
Yeah,
that's completely true.
Which is
100%
breathtakingly
true.
Refreshing.
Shooting-wise, not, but story-wise, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he does homages to other things. Yeah. Like, he's obviously, I mean, Kill Bill is just... Every shot is just a reference to something else, but everything he's doing, I mean, if your writing's original, I will give you so much of the benefit.
He's a master. He is a master, and I completely agree with him.
Which is why we're focusing on it.
And I'm glad you went to go watch Man from U.N.C.L.E. Please watch it, because it was actually a lot of fun.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, and the next point, I said that fast.
You did.
All right, next is an interesting discussion, and it basically is rooted at the way Tarantino thinks that he thinks The Fighter is a much better movie than The Town. But let's listen to the quote, and we'll kind of get into it. He's like, I really like The Town, which also came out in 2010. It was a good crime film. However, next to The Fighter, it just couldn't hold up because everybody in The Town is beyond gorgeous. Ben Affleck is the one who gets away with it because his Boston accent is so good. But the crook is absolutely gorgeous. The bank teller is absolutely gorgeous. The FBI guy is absolutely gorgeous. The town whore, Blake Lively, is absolutely gorgeous. Jeremy Renner is the least gorgeous guy. And he's pretty fucking good looking.
Quote.
Then, if you look at The Fighter and you look at those sisters, they're just so magnificent. That's actually very well put. When you see David O. Russell cast these sisters, and you see Ben Affleck cast Blake Lively, you can't compare the two movies. One shows how phony the other is. Alright. My question to you is, obviously the first question is, like, do you think The Town is a better movie, is a lesser of a movie because of looks than The Fighter? Mm-hmm. And then my second question is, can looks be that distracting that they did take away from the movie?
I think if you were to cast The Fighter, first of all, I personally don't like The Fighter as much as other people do. Mm-hmm. I think other people... I feel like it's not the best David O. Russell movie, it's not the best boxing movie, it's not the best Christian Bale movie, it's not the best Mark Wahlberg movie. There's all these things add up to me thinking the movie's good, it's not great. That's my opinion of that movie. The Town, to me, I've seen more, and I like it just a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of unfair because they're not really similar movies.
No, they're not.
They're both set in Boston.
The Fighter and The Town are like two of like my favorite movies.
And they're very different.
The Town is like a weird crime drama love story to Boston. It does sweeping shots of Boston. Yeah. While The Fighter is set in Lowell and only Lowell. And that's not even in Boston.
Pride of Lowell.
Yeah. So
it's a suburb of. So
of course, like The Town's gonna be like this beautiful, like I don't think you can compare them.
It's kind of disingenuous to compare them, but for the sake of the argument, I think I first of all love the fact that he said that they're magnificent because he just has like an appreciation
the
for
sisters,
either
like my favorite part of the movie.
And honestly, when I think about the scenes, like that scene first pops into my head, which is saying something because it's obviously the first thing that pops into his head because he forgets that Mark Wahlberg's in this movie, who is pretty. Amy Adams is pretty. Like they're not ugly people in this movie. Yeah. Like
You owe me $200.
Yeah, fantastic quotes in the movie. But
You shut your mouth.
I think that the town. They're two different movies. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But I think The Town is a little bit of a better movie.
My personal opinion, I agree. No, I think The Fighter, in my opinion, is a little better of a movie. But this is the thing. That's like picking, do I want pizza today or do I want like nachos? That's a win-win situation.
Right, exactly. Neither of them are bad.
Yeah.
That's
So
a
like
good point.
the way, but like going to his argument, I kind of agree because and at the end of the day, the director, even though they're the ones making the movie, they're not necessarily the ones that make the final decisions when it comes to casting. Well, if you're Ben Affleck, this was at the time where the movie was made. He was still trying to make a name for himself directing.
Yeah, this was the movie that brought him back on the map.
That was the one that put him on the map. Yep. So it was like, all right, I kind of have to do what the studio asked. So obviously Jeremy Renner wasn't necessarily a name. I'm pretty sure he had a hand in choosing him.
Yeah.
But like everybody else in that movie, like Blake Lively, that's going to put people in seats. John Hamm,
distracting, though.
putting people in seats.
Distracting.
It is distracting. I'm not gonna lie. Like Blake Lively, the town whore, she looked like the town whore. I'm not gonna lie.
And her accent was actually fairly convincing. Like she did a good job.
That was probably her best performance.
It's not her fault that she's gorgeous. Like it's just they didn't do a good enough job of making her ugly. So it's like you just couldn't not.
It's just so funny, like the two like dichotomies of like the girl roles. Yeah. Because in The Fighter, it's like, oh, the sisters were calling Amy Adams like the MTV girl because she was like the pretty one. But then you put her next to Blake Lively.
And Blake Lively just looks like a Hollywood version of what you would
she
think
is
a
like,
city girl would
she
look
is
like.
the Ferrari of
exactly.
of horrors if I've ever seen them.
Right, and then you have John Hamm playing like this badass cop. It's just like you're too pretty to be that role. Like it just seems weird to me.
I agree. It's a tricky thing because like context is hard, and I kind of don't appreciate that you kind of took digs at that. If you like the movie, you like the movie,
right? Exactly.
But at the same time, it's like I agree with him. Like my question, the other question I wanted to ask is, can you get away with making a top, not a big budget, but like a top budget dramatic movie like these kinds of filmmakers make? With a, like, I guess, quote unquote, less attractive talent, not necessarily just physically, but like also from a popularity standpoint.
It's tough though because that's a whole other genre of actors to me. Is like there are actors that are just solid performers that may or may not give a crap how they look.
Goodfellas back in the day, like did that have quote unquote
I
attractive?
mean,
Ray Liotta was a no name,
right? Yeah. But I mean, yeah, true. But that's another argument is that having a no name who also is very attractive in that role, like he was a good looking guy in that movie. It's not like they had a random person.
I wouldn't call him an A-lister though. I know when it comes to A-list looks, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
but
go
ahead.
He definitely was someone that commanded attention. Whereas if you had someone who maybe looked more like someone who lived in Boston, that maybe wasn't a movie star look, I don't think it would attract as. We were talking about earlier, like you have Gone Baby Gone, you have The Town. If you had Casey Affleck in The Town, there'd be less people seeing the movie. So it's like to that argument, if you want butts in the theater, you're gonna have to do it.
Yeah, and the thing too,
it's just less genuine.
It's a stupid argument. It's not a stupid argument. No, but Blake Lively wasn't even that famous when she made The Town.
No, she was pretty famous.
She's not
I'm looking
A-list
at her
actress
IMDb
famous.
right now.
Well, the thing is,
there's not a single thing I recognize.
No, Gossip Girl.
She's not your kind of
TV.
famous.
That's
She's
the
a
thing.
huge television
She's
actress.
a huge television star. Like right now, obviously, Gossip Girl is obviously no longer on air.
Right.
But like she was
at the time,
she was like a socialite. She was always out. She was linked to Ryan. She was linked to Ryan Reynolds.
Yep.
Obviously, they became a power couple now. Like those are two epitome of people that are like they're not. You look at their credits, you're like, oh, they're not great, but you always hear about them.
Yeah, they're almost too pretty for their own good, which is a problem.
I'll say this: Melissa Leo, I think she's hot for her age.
Jesus.
So
well, it's funny because
I disagree with you, Tarantino.
No, it's true because I didn't see her until after I'd seen that film. When I'd seen her in person, I'm like, she is a lovely lady.
She is.
I was like, they made her horrible.
She can manage my boxing career. But I agree with both of you. I think you make great points. It's really hard because I think Tarantino needs to also understand. Look, dude, not everybody's Tarantino. Like you can't he's one of the few directors.
For him,
You're one of the few directors that could literally pick any actor they want and put them in a role.
Any time period, any genre, anything. And he makes
and specifically with casting. Yeah. When he first made Reservoir Dogs, none of those guys besides what's his name? The name escapes me. The main character, Ray. His actor's name is Ray something.
Oh yeah. Hold on. Keep going. I'll figure out the name.
But all those actors were pretty mid-level or quote unquote wash-ups. Pulp Fiction, you could say the same. Besides Bruce Willis, he's been on record saying that he wanted a different actor than Bruce Willis, but the studio's like, look, dude, we need to get people in seats. He's like, screw it, I'll cast Bruce Willis.
That's
that's a fact. And from now on, he could cast anybody he wants. You look at Hateful Eight, there's not a big name star in there. Harvey Keitel, that's the one. I thought Ray for some reason. Harvey Keitel was a guy who kind of was just a he was a Scorsese guy. And then he put him in that film. That revived his career.
He put all bit part actors in his movies.
So he's a guy that really understands casting, but at the same time, there's not a lot of filmmakers out there, and a lot of studios besides the Weinstein Company where you could get away with something like that.
He also put Brad Pitt in Inglourious Basterds. So
I think
distraction.
No, I'll tell you that. That was when looking back on that film, that was so intentional, and you can see why. Because
it was fun.
It was so over the top. That movie.
Unless it's tongue in cheek, he's kind of off-put by it.
But what I love about this interview is that he is so nitpicky about movies. He just wants them to be the best possible thing they can be. He clearly loves movies.
Yeah. You have,
I have an article right here that he just came out with. I don't know if it was today in AV Club or something. Oh no, recent interview with Vulture, and he's picking apart It Follows, which was that horror movie from 6 months ago,
which we thought was pretty good.
And I liked it, but he goes through 8 different things.
He breaks it down,
it's not
and it's little details. You're like, my God, he's legit.
He's a movie
studying every.
And he goes into how they chose too much of a gorgeously handsome geeky boy to play the role who should have just slept with her and this and that.
And one thing to say about that real quick is that he's not attacking, but he's criticizing in a positive way a movie that the director's 5 years out of film school. He went to Florida State. That's the reason why we knew him as graduates. So to me, I'm it's great that he's not just he's already in this top echelon, and he's still absorbing the material of other people. It's fantastic.
And look, because Spielberg, even though Spielberg never publicly says it, Spielberg's the exact same way. He watches a ton of movies, even stuff that you don't think he would watch. When just to really quickly nail on it, a few weeks ago, The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson got a letter from Spielberg saying, I was really impressed by your performance on Saturday Night Live.
And he's like,
you watched Saturday Night Live? But you know what? That goes to show you,
don't
you never
know.
Money
on Saturday Night?
Yeah, that's the thing, that. Yeah, that's what's funny. I'm glad he's a film geek, and I love it. Tarantino's awesome.
With no motive.
And no filter.
But no filter.
And speaking of being critical, the last thing that we're talking about is kind of how he feels like he's the man and there's no one really near him. He said this. He's like, this may come across as egotistical, but I don't really feel I'm in competition with anybody anymore. I'm in competition with myself. David O. Russell can have the biggest hit of the year, and that doesn't take anything away from me. I couldn't have been happier with that. Rick Linklater was at the Oscars this year. He just threw that in there.
What is it with him and David O. Russell? I feel like he's really digging his movies.
I'll say this. I know we talked about it before, but they're very similar in how they do their movies, where they're just kind of let the actors act.
Yeah.
But Tarantino's much more strict with his dialogue.
Yeah. There's just a lot of it in both movies.
My question that I pose to you guys is, if there was somebody that's quote unquote competent, that should be where if we were to tell Tarantino, whoa man, this guy's in competition with you, actually, who would that be?
God, that is hard to say because he's so one of a kind.
Yeah.
I mean, they're actors. I mean, they're directors that are auteurs in their own way. I think that's the angle I'm going to take because I refuse to say there's someone just as good as him. I would say that another director who is as intentional as he is with everything he does on film, or in this case digitally, is David Fincher. Yeah. I think, and they're completely opposite, because Quentin Tarantino is going and shooting movies on 70mm, and he's trying to smack people around who aren't shooting on film anymore. Where David Fincher's I can't do 70 takes on film, so no. So it's but you see the spectrum and how wide and far apart they are, but at the same time, they're both so specific and intentional with everything they do.
I think I would love to ask Quentin Tarantino what he thinks about Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh, that's a good one.
Ooh. Just because...
Sound like a cow.
I mean, Quentin Tarantino saying, you need to cast people and for the role. I think Paul Thomas Anderson does a
great point.
Yeah, it's true.
There Will Be Blood, The Master with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and even Punch Drunk Love, choosing freaking.
That's the best point you can make. No, that's the best point.
Exactly.
And that's his version of a comedy.
I'm standing up. You literally just sat on Tarantino's argument.
And then last but not least, Mocky Mock in his first that's a huge role. That needed.
He's giving
to carry that.
No, it's
role.
true. He's giving David O. Russell so much credit for doing such a good job with The Fighter, but that was done 20 years ago. Ow, my shoulder just cracked. Done 20 years ago, PTA. So.
Suck it, Tarantino. That was awesome. You're literally if we were judging who won this argument, you would have.
You haven't even spoken yet.
I haven't even spoken. That's the thing. That was an awesome interview. I'm just gonna be a fanboy right now. No, I completely agree with you. I think Paul, from that aspect, you're completely right because he makes his own films. There is no influence. On the studio when he makes his films.
And now he's doing a film about freaking Radiohead.
Johnny Greenwood,
that's true.
I think if there was someone in the competition, and it upsets me because he didn't include them because they came up almost the exact same time, the Coen brothers. How do you completely shaft the Coen brothers?
My argument is that's the only combo of directors he's afraid of. I think that's the only one that can really hold a candle to. No, it's true though. I really do. That's a really good point.
Like, you want to talk about dialogue, you could even throw in casting as well.
They're not afraid of any time period.
No. Like, genre. Inside Llewyn Davis, say what you want about the movie. There were no stars in that. Carey Mulligan's not a star.
You shut your mouth.
Well, John Goodman is a...
John Goodman's a Coen Brothers,
but
bro.
He's a staple, yeah.
Was he even in the trailers, though?
Yeah, John Goodman? Yeah, he was. He was driving the car.
He was what made me want to see the movie.
He makes fun of the cat. He's just like, oh...
Understandable.
Bring your dick along, too. Yeah. But no, I completely... Look, this is the thing. Like, Tarantino is batting 1,000 when it comes to movies. Yeah. Say what you want about Death Proof, but every movie he's made is entertaining.
I'm
every
honestly
movie's
really
good.
happy for Quentin Tarantino because I feel like he was so nervous. Like he wanted his sequence of films to be so perfect, and I feel like they really are turning out that way. And I'm nervous that he wants to quit while he's ahead.
I don't think he will.
He's not gonna quit. No,
I think he's afraid. He's like, well, now I said I was gonna do 10, but I've got a lot of ideas.
That's the thing. Like, he's only in his Western phase right now. He said, he's like, oh, if I make
any other director would be like, oh my god, stop.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's hard for him to direct. Like, you compare somebody like Spielberg, who has so many films, and then you have Tarantino, who has less than 10.
Yeah.
And yet he's already been regarded as one of the greatest and most influential filmmakers of all time. I think.
It's ridiculous.
How about this? I wanted to throw this last question in there.
Oh.
Is there any young upcoming filmmaker that you can see oh man, this guy could make some noise in the future and maybe be remembered?
Who's the guy who directed Fantastic Four?
Good God. Yeah, we are not...
Pretending that we don't remember his name is fantastic.
Trank you for that one. Yeah. Dude. But is there any filmmaker right now that you see, and you could say no, that's totally fine.
No, there probably is. I just put it on the spot. I'm not sure... Do you have one right off the top of your head? Me, personally, I'm a huge fan of Rob Zombie. He'll never be nominated for Academy Award. I know that for a fact. Okay.
He'll never be at the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
But you want to talk about a guy that understands what he does, and he casts his own guys, writes his own stuff, knows his own style. I love every movie that he's made. I guess, absolutely all of them.
I guess in that vein, since he's not necessarily brand new, he's had a few pieces to give you an idea. I would probably go with Edgar Wright.
That's a great one.
He's done
That's a terrific one.
4 big movies, and
who Tarantino loves, by the way.
I mean, understandably so. I mean, Robert Rodriguez helped do music for Hot Fuzz. There's a camaraderie there that you can tell. There's a sort of a brothership, but I think he's probably one of my favorite up and coming guys.
Yeah, man, I love those guys because technically Tarantino's a genre guy.
Yeah.
He'll say, "Oh, I'm in my Western phase." Besides,
he picks whatever genre he wants.
Yeah, you could honestly besides Jackie Brown, every single one of those are pretty much a Western. Pretty much a Western.
Yeah, they're Western in
Western
nature.
In style, in my opinion. Yeah, but no, Jonathan, is there anybody that you would say?
I honestly don't have one.
No, and that's the thing. I hope they this is the thing. I know Rob Zombie's already going to be who he's going to be.
Yeah.
Cary Fukunaga's another guy that is coming up. I hope he makes more films. I haven't seen him anything since True Detective, which Tarantino hated. But I'd like to see something good. But I look forward to it. Wes Anderson. You can make a case for too. He obviously you watch a movie of his and you know it for a fact that's a Wes Anderson movie.
As one who's comparable to him. Yeah.
Whose dialogue you're like, oh god, it's a Wes Anderson movie. That's how I react when I watch a Wes Anderson movie.
You know who I actually think I've come to really like his recent work is Spike Jonze. I think if he keeps doing
you know what? That's great. That's great.
I loved Her. I think he's got when he has command of his stuff from beginning to end. I think it's really compelling.
I just wish there were more directors like Spielberg and Tarantino who are more out there with the fans. Not so much fans, but out there saying, expressing their love for film. Because you talk about Spike Jonze, you don't really hear about him.
Guy,
yeah, and it's you wish more people would kind of come out and be like, hey, yeah, I saw that movie and it sucked.
Sure.
Yeah,
I feel like J.J. Abrams would do that kind of interview. I just feel like he's so consciously aware.
I said great directors.
Listen,
I said great directors.
Say what you will, but I mean, it looks like Spielberg's tapped him to be the next version of himself.
I think J.J. Abrams just taps himself to Steven Spielberg.
I mean, he did set himself up really well. So
get off my. I just wanted to say that. That's good.
Oh man.
No, but that's our show. That's our show for today. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll be on a short hiatus.
Yeah, a couple work assignments.
But we'll release a couple episodes that we had recorded. If not, watch movies.
You might hear some
tweet
us.
Yeah, tweet at us. Send us emails.
Also, we saw End of the Tour.
Yes, go check it out.
Solid
performances.
Pretty good.
End of the Tour was really good. I loved it. I thought American Ultra was a lot of fun.
So big
Two different Jesse Eisenberg movies.
It's something go watch movies, please.
Variety.
So we'll be back as soon as we can get back to you guys.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm Adrian Alderette.
Jonathan Fisher.
I'm JP Lee, and until then, see you when the credits roll.